Nobody move. Everything will be okay. We have some planes. Just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're returning to the airport.
"23 years have passed since the terrorist attack of September 11, 2001. Not only the USA has changed, but the entire world. Jihad, Al-Qaeda, terrorism, and Osama bin Laden are now perceived as synonymous words. We remember who embodied worldwide evil at the beginning of the third millennium. But do we know the true reasons for this attack? What truly motivated the terrorists, and why did their leader hate America so much? Every war has at least 2 points of view. We propose to look at the other side of the barricades and view the 9/11 attack through the eyes of a terrorist. Osama bin Laden was born into the wealthiest family in Saudi Arabia, which had close ties to the king. But soon, at the age of 10, Osama lost his father in a plane crash. The boy painfully endured this tragedy. Young Osama's inheritance amounted to $30 million. Osama's upbringing was taken over by his mother, who was a deeply religious woman. She carefully ensured that her son grew up strictly in the spirit of Orthodox Islam and had a great influence on him. Osama grew up as a shy boy, inclined toward science. His mother planned for him to take over the family business and become a construction tycoon like his father. So she sent him to study economics and management at the country's most prestigious university. It was there that the future terrorist #1 met Abdullah Azzam, who became his first spiritual mentor. Abdullah Azzam was a Palestinian Islamist theologian known for his active propaganda of jihad. The concept of jihad means effort directed at defending and spreading Islam and is considered the noblest and highest goal for a true Muslim. As the main ideologist of the Afghan Arabs movement, Azzam converts Osama to radical Islamism. Bin Laden studies well to please his mother, but she still warns her son against the influence of his too radical professor, Abdullah Azzam. Despite this, the boy still curiously discovers for himself the idea of a caliphate, the idea of freedom and the unity of the entire Muslim world. He even dreams of one day standing alongside Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, or Napoleon. The year 1979 arrives. Soviet troops invade Afghanistan, and jihad is declared against them. Young student Osama bin Laden faces a choice. On one hand, he must finish his studies and lead the family business. And on the other, the young man's soul yearns for justice in the fight for the freedom of Muslim brothers against Soviet invaders. To prove to his mother that she raised a worthy son, he finally makes a fateful decision. At the age of 22, Osama drops out of university and, together with his mentor, sets off to war. January 1980. Bin Laden arrives in the town of Peshawar, near the border with Afghanistan. Young Osama quickly learns military affairs. He even actively participated in battles as the head of a small detachment. A large number of Arab mercenaries joined the war against the infidels. Aid was actively coming through international Islamic organizations. The leaders of Saudi Arabia strongly supported the resistance of Afghan Muslims. So very soon, Saudi intelligence services approached bin Laden, offering him to become the kingdom's representative in Afghanistan. In 1984, bin Laden and Abdullah Azzam founded the organization Maktab al-Khidamat in Pakistan. Through it, the Saudis transferred billions in donations to the Mujahideen, and Osama kept a percentage for his services. He invested the earned funds in the construction of training camps, roads, and underground tunnels under the Afghan-Pakistani border for the transfer of insurgents and weapons. For this, he used his family's construction equipment. Osama proves to be quite an entrepreneur and good organizer. and does almost what his mother wanted, but in his unique way. Having created reliable transport logistics, bin Laden establishes drug trafficking for additional profit. He spends his own earned money on training, equipping, and arming volunteers, thereby gaining great popularity among the Mujahideen. Mujahideen, a participant in Jihad, literally one who makes an effort. A fallen Mujahideen is considered a Shaheed martyr who testified to his faith before Allah. As part of Operation Cyclone, the USA also directed financial aid to the Mujahideen through Pakistani intelligence. Approximately during that period, bin Laden begins successful cooperation with the CIA. The liaison for this cooperation was Osama's acquaintance, the blind Egyptian sheikh Omar Abdel Raham. In 1988, the war was coming to an end. Victory over the USSR was near, so the most influential ideologists of Islamic Jihad organized a secret meeting. The main goal of this meeting was to conduct jihad throughout the world after victory in Afghanistan. Bin Laden was also invited, as they understood that his ingenuity and great wealth, combined with the experience of Egyptian Islamists, would help achieve the said goal. As a result of the gathering, a decision was made to create the organization Al-Qaeda, which would soon become famous worldwide. The founders were Osama bin Laden and Abdullah Azzam. Despite the strong partnership, Azzam and bin Laden faced a divergence of worldviews. The mentor insisted that the global jihad should start with his native Palestine, but bin Laden saw this fight on a much larger scale. Many already considered bin Laden a worthy replacement for Abdullah Azzam, which greatly worried the latter, as he planned to pass his high position to his sons. But Azzam didn't worry for long, because a year later, at the end of 1989, his car was blown up when he was traveling with his two sons. Who ordered this murder remains unknown. Their joint organization with bin Laden, Maktab al-Qidamat, dissolved, and most of it merged into Al-Qaeda under Osama's leadership. After the end of the war in Afghanistan, bin Laden returns to Saudi Arabia as a hero, the conqueror of the Soviet superpower. His mother is pleased because her son finally starts to engage in the family business, whose cash turnover reaches up to $36 billion a year. It seemed that a bright future was ahead. But in August 1990, troops from neighboring Iraq occupied Kuwait, creating a serious threat to Saudi oil fields. Bin Laden immediately offers the king his help to use the Mujahideen to protect against a possible invasion of the Iraqi army. But the monarch refuses the offer, choosing instead the help of the USA, which quickly deploys its troops on the territory of Arabia. This deeply offends bin Laden. He sees in this an overpowering pressure from America on the leader of his homeland. During the years of the Afghan War, bin Laden studied the methodology of American intelligence services and understood all the danger that the democratic United States posed to his Muslim country. For bin Laden, America became the same threat as the Soviet Union, and possibly even greater. Bin Laden publicly condemns the king's actions, accuses him of corruption and departure from true Islamic norms, for which Osama and his supporters are forced to leave the country. Yesterday's hero quickly turned into an outcast, but the real blow was yet to come. After this, his relatives' accounts are frozen, so they publicly renounce bin Laden. The mother renounces the son, who was not afraid to stand up for the ideals she taught him. The US government deprived him of his homeland, forced his own family to renounce him, and continued to oppress his faith. Now, Osama bin Laden clearly understood who his personal enemy number one was. But how to defeat such a powerful adversary as America? Bin Laden needed a plan and time to create one. He flees to Sudan, where he fruitfully cooperates with the new government led by Omar al-Bashir. Osama settles on a cozy farm on the banks of the Nile. There, he engages in self-education, studying in detail the history of conflicts of the 20th century. He grows sunflowers, the seeds of which are exported to Italy. He builds an 800-kilometer highway that connected the Sudanese capital with Port Sudan. But this activity served only as a reliable cover for him. In reality, he was building his terrorist network around the world in this way. Bin Laden's plans were indeed becoming large-scale. At that moment, Osama bin Laden's authority was so great that his word was law, not only for the Mujahideen, but also for many influential people in the Middle East. Soon, he sends his supporters to Europe and America to register various organizations there through proxies that would represent his interests. In 1993, bin Laden sponsors the activities of Omar Abdel Raham. Omar was a spiritual ideologist and another radical Islamist with experience. It was he who organized the first terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in New York on February 26, 1993. It was he who formulated the thought that made Osama famous worldwide. To kill a dragon, you need to hit it right in the heart. The CIA actively began to counteract the flourishing of terrorists. In May 1996, under pressure from the USA, the Sudanese government demands bin Laden to cease his terrorist activities and eventually expels him from the country. So he, accompanied by 400 Mujahideen, heads to Afghanistan, where he joins the Young Taliban movement, which he actively financially supports. Here in Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden finally felt ready for a real holy war. He allocates significant funds to Islamic extremists on U.S. territory and declares jihad against America. In response, President Bill Clinton signs a secret decree that officially starts the American fight against the terrorist network Al-Qaeda. In 1997, bin Laden gives an interview in which he makes a series of accusations against America and makes it clear that he will not back down from his intention to expel Americans from the Middle East. In August 1998, Al-Qaeda successfully carries out a series of terrorist attacks in Nairobi, the capital of Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, the capital of Tanzania at that time, targeting U.S. embassies. Everything was meticulously planned. The bomb in Nairobi was delivered in a truck to the back entrance of the embassy and detonated at 10:35 local time. The bomb in Dar es Salaam exploded around 10:40. The infamous signature that would be recognized in America a few years later. After these attacks, the CIA announced a reward of $5 million for information about bin Laden's whereabouts, who had already entered the top 10 most dangerous terrorists in the world. But despite the success of the attacks in Africa, he felt deep sadness because among the victims were Muslim brothers and sisters. It is known that in 1999, his mother came to visit him in Afghanistan. She tried to reach out to her son to stop and abandon what he is doing. The mother suspected Osama's involvement in high-profile terrorist attacks in which Muslims died, so she asked her son directly if he had really become a killer of Muslims. This was their last meeting, after which he did not leave his cave for several days. Osama realized that he was a violator of the sacred laws of Islam, which he considered himself a defender of. So his mother's question deeply wounded him. It was then that he finally decided that he needed to attack the territory of America and its citizens directly. It was the United States that were the creators of all his fears and the fears of all Muslims. In 1999, Osama bin Laden begins to nurture a plan to attack the USA. The targets of the attack are to be objects that literally embody America: the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, the White House, and the Capitol. Strikes on these objects will show that America is weak and vulnerable. Bin Laden believed that in this story, he was a martyr. He instilled this faith in those terrorists who were to carry out the attack. All of them took a separate oath, bayat, personally to Bin Laden. Before them stood exactly the Osama bin Laden we are used to imagining. His personality is mutilated and dark. His revenge for the suffering of all Muslims will be merciless. Now he is the author of future unspeakable pain and fear for millions of people. Bin Laden remembers that the first attack on the World Trade Center in 1993 was unsuccessful due to the small amount of explosives. So that needs to change. Then it occurs to him that civilian aircraft with full fuel tanks can serve as instruments of terror. This non-obvious solution had several advantages. First, the element of surprise. No one had done this before. Second, the military wouldn't shoot them down or interfere, as there would be hostages on board. In total, it was planned to hijack 5 planes. For this, 25 young mujahideen with clean passports were selected, who could enter America without hindrance. But the CIA exposed one of the teams, which forced them to abandon the hijacking of the 5th plane and the attack on the Capitol. Eventually, only 19 perpetrators remained. During preparation, Al-Qaeda members tried to bring cold weapons through the security of small airports, but each time they were identified as suspicious and not allowed on board. That's why the terrorists used ordinary office knives with blades not exceeding 10 centimeters as weapons. Meanwhile, bin Laden exposed the flaws in the American system. He knew that due to excessive bureaucracy, different U.S. departments did not have established communication, and in some cases did not exchange information at all. This meant that if the CIA exposed Al-Qaeda members during their arrival in the country, they would not be able to inform the FBI in time about the need to track the suspects. The plan was ready by early 2000. On Tuesday, September 11, 2001, at approximately 8:00 a.m., the Mujahideen are to check in for long-haul flights. They will have 20 to 40 minutes to hijack the aircraft. After capturing a flight attendant, they will penetrate the cockpit. Around 9:00 a.m., the first strike on one of the World Trade Center towers should be carried out. In just 10 to 15 minutes, a second attack should be carried out. The planes need to be directed to the level of the 100th floor. Bin Laden didn't know that the towers could collapse. His plan included showing the burning World Trade Center, a symbol of American capitalism, to the whole world, for as long as possible. He planned that throughout the day, the towers on fire would distract attention and instill despair and fear in Americans. Fighter jets from Otis Air Base in Massachusetts will be directed to New York. Meanwhile, around 10:00 a.m., the Pentagon in Washington needs to be attacked. Later, at 10:45 a.m., deliver the final blow to the White House. September 11, 2001. Afghanistan. Bin Laden is on a walk. He's anxious. At this time, Mohammed Atta and Abdulaziz Al-Omari are heading in a blue Nissan Altima to South Portland to check in for a flight to Boston. The rest of the terrorists from the first team are already waiting for them at Logan Airport. Mohammed Atta and Abdulaziz Al-Omari successfully pass the control zone with office knives. Bin Laden sees an eagle in the sky, holding a snake in its beak. The leader of the terrorist group, Mohammed Atta, in Boston, loses his suitcase at the airport. But there's no time to wait. 4 Mujahideen board American Airlines Flight 11. Osama remembers the last conversation with his mother. Doubt gnaws at him. What if there are Muslims in the Twin Towers? Is he really ready for such sacrifices? The terrorists hijack the plane, kill the pilots, take control. What if, in fighting the dragon, Osama himself turned into a fire monster? Flight 11 changes course and turns toward New York.
Don't try to make any stupid moves.
Is he really a killer of Muslims, as his mother thinks of him?
Nobody moves, please. We are going back to the airport.
And if so, does he have the right to judge other killers of his people?
Get in my, no you can't read my poker face.
I just created my channel, but the competition on YouTube is very high. I try to make as interesting and high-quality videos as possible, but it is very difficult. Please subscribe to my channel. It will give me inspiration and motivation to make the best content for you.